you, Madam Speaker. I want to start with a very special welcome to the bright and beautiful faces I see in here of these young, the future generation of Guyana. We are happy to have you students here with us today. And I know we've got them on both sides. I also want to start with a moment of serious reflection. I want to extend sympathies to the family of Felicia Ganesh. I was driving to this parliament this morning and heard a horrific news story about Felicia Ganesh, the mother of 8 children, the smallest of 7 children, the smallest is 8 months old, being hacked to death by her partner. I'm sure later this evening more of us will hear that. And I offer sympathies to the family. And I say to the former speaker in this house just now, that we as a people can always do better. And that is the message that I want to give today. We, when we are in government, must always do better. Because although she spoke about women being able to walk out and throw the man out, the reality is we have to provide more systems to ensure Felicia Ganesh does not end up where she is today. Mr. Speaker, distinguished members of this honorable House, I rise today to address the 2025 national budget with a commitment to constructive dialogue, recognizing the commendable efforts of the staff at the Ministry of Finance, and even the gentleman with responsibility for finance, not the minister, but with responsibility. And I'm saying that I want to highlight some of the areas that we must strive for improvement. But first, I want to start with an examination of how certain parliamentarians approach the business of discrediting each other through falsehoods that leave the lingering impression that malfeasance has been committed when in fact it has not. This may be attributed in no small measure to the opening statements in the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh's presentation. The Honorable Member, there comes a time in the life of any nation when the distortions of truth must be met with clarity of facts, lest our history be rewritten by the most strident voices, those empty vessels, and not by steadfast truths. Today I rise to address yours and that of the PPPC's oft-repeated preference for twisting narratives for political mileage, a practice that threatens the very fabric of our democracy and the intelligence of our citizenry. Madam Speaker, it was most unfortunate that getting all excited about the possibility of a truly transformational budget that would bring, I quote, from secure, prosperous, and a sustainable Guyana, that Guyanese, and worse yet, a few potential international investors who were listening earnestly got a strong dose of cost-down politics for the first hour. This has come to define this honorable minister, and Madam Speaker, there's a beautiful word called mendacious. Defined, let me quote Oxford Dictionary, as not telling the truth, lying, mendacious propaganda. On page 2, a mere few minutes into the speech, referring to 2020, when they came to power, we find some mendacious propaganda. I quote the minister, Guyana found itself in the unprecedented throes of a resurgent government and economic calamity of the pre-1992 vintage. Mr. Speaker, I lament having to do this over and over again, but I have to do it to clear the air so my Guyanese brothers and sisters know truth from fiction. This year I refer to another of the IMF's press releases, number 19 of 332. And this is what in 2019 the IMF said about our economy that the minister claims was a calamity. Guyana's economic growth strengthened from 2018 with broad-based expansion across all major sectors. Real GDP grew by 4.1%, led by construction and services, up from 2% in 2017. Inflation remained at 1.6% at the end of 2018. What's the inflation rate this budget says? Over 2? Okay. Public finances improved in 2019 as the central government deficit came in at 3.5% of GDP, lower than the budgeted 5.4% of GDP. Public debt and the external current account deficit are projected to decline steadily following the onset of oil production. Check your facts, Guyana. Check your facts. Mr. Speaker, well, another piece of mendacious propaganda is found on page 24 of the budget speech, paragraph 482. History would record that the Amila Falls project was derailed by the APNU AFC, and you heard the majority of the most honorable member of the House that spoke before me, who has been in our parliament for decades, regaled us of the opposition's strike against the Amila Falls project. I want to remind Guyana and the public, every time you hear them say the opposition killed the Amila Falls project, and that's why you don't have electricity today, I want you to go to the IDB report. Let me read what it says. Amila Falls GYL 1035, technical briefing, March 20th, 2014. Management is seeking guidance from the board proceeding with the Amila Falls project, given that, and we accept, the project offers Guyana a long-term climate-friendly, renewable solution for its energy sector by introducing the first significant diversification to its energy matrix with potential fiscal and balance of payments benefits. So we never had any attempt to change the energy mix in the previous 23 years. However, this is what IDB says. IDB's NSG loan would entail a credit rating of RC7, which exceeds the risk tolerance as defined for all NSG products. And the bank has never approved a loan with this rating. Guyana Power and Light GPL, the sole off-taker, has a weak credit profile, poor operational, financial and technical performance, high energy losses, fuel volatility, tariff uncertainty, and uncertain hydrology. The IDB did not want to approve the loan. It is right here. Mendacious propaganda. Mr. Speaker, then there's additional mendacious propaganda when they refer to the 18 million sign-in bonus. a subject that has been tossed around recklessly with reckless abandon by those on the other house side of this chamber. They have sought to sow confusion and mistrust, insinuating impropriety where none exists. The record will show, the history will bear witness that under the APNU AFC government, this signing bonus was responsibly placed in a designated account within the Bank of Guyana. Its purpose was as clear as daylight: to safeguard our nation's interests in the ICJ case concerning the border dispute with Venezuela. People of Guyana, Madam Speaker, it was calculated then that the patriotic decision was rooted in the understanding that our sovereignty and territorial integrity required not only words but financial preparedness. Where then is the impropriety? This narrative of missing funds is nothing more than a straw man built to distract us all from the current administration's own shortcomings. I want to refer this parliament, I'm not going to read it, but I want to refer the people of Guyana to the parliamentary sitting in December 2017, when former Minister Carl Greenwich stood here and laid out the facts. And in addition to that, we know that there exists a receipt for the money that went into the bank account and also into, see it big there, received, you see it? The documents are there, Guyana. So the majority of the members on the other side that come with the same old mendacious propaganda, you know who's telling the truth. Mr. Speaker, we are a mature nation, and I applaud several of the measures and principles in Budget 2025. Any program that attempts to share more of the people's wealth with the citizenry, Madam Speaker, I support. Madam Speaker, we are now making 65 million Guyana dollars an hour from our oil and gas industry. And much of these measures to ease the cost of living are absent from this budget. Madam Speaker, the high cost of cost of living make our citizens drown. And we all know that this is undisputed. Everyone in this house knows that hundreds of thousands of families feel it every day. It is against this background that I say 1.38 trillion, yes, is the largest budget ever. But this budget highlights that largest isn't always best. Madam Speaker, with national discussions estimating that the minimum wage should be between 100 and 150,000, a pension of 41,000 just does not cut it. Too late and can't help. Mr. Speaker, the cries from persons in our communities who have been struck off the public assistance list is of concern. Worse yet, that in this Dubai-rich economy, we've only allocated a $3,000 increase. And Madam Speaker, what does $3,000 do? I am aware of a very good friend who has a 16-year-old paraplegic daughter. And to take her to the Diamond Special Needs School costs $4,000 a day. $4,000 a day. Madam Speaker, what I'm highlighting is that Budget 25 may be building all the fancy bridges and roads, but it's not putting more money in the pockets where it's needed more. Where is the people-centered approach? Where is the balance between infrastructure and the ever-increasing high cost of living? We have a responsibility to carry as many of our people as it is possible to a better life. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that prosperity in Budget 25 2025 will be delayed, as we know it is once again heavy on infrastructure projects and short on investment in people. The increases in the income tax threshold, adjustments on personal income tax, and the modest reduction in the VAT rate are great, but all have little impact on the lowest of income earners in Guyana, but reinforces that the expansion of those that have. Mr. Speaker, we are aware that oil discovery and the advent of an oil economy raises expectations. Naturally, citizens expect more spending and increases to their wages. The rapid redistribution of wealth and income takes place, which in turn widens the wealth gaps. This we see happening in Guyana today. Unfortunately, this can easily result in the collapse of the foreign exchange rate, leading to foreign exchange rationing and shortages, which we've already heard complaints of from the private sector. Madam Speaker, high inflation, high food costs, and emptying of the sovereign wealth fund are all now our realities. Property costs increase, largely driven by the demand for housing by foreigners. But this drives up prices, making home ownership and rentals almost impossible for a large section of our population. Already this budget identifies a drop in our overall growth to 10.6%, a result of the expected decline in oil prices. And the one-man show, Oil Czar, has already stated, just a couple days ago, it was a headline in our newspapers, I think it was on Sunday. Yes, the one-man show, Oil Czar, has already stated that oil money is not guaranteed next year. Imagine that. Especially in light of planned increased oil production in the US under the new Trump administration. These are therefore economically unpredictable times and highlights the challenges of an economy overly dependent, and one considers that all did better. 2024, really productive capacity. It is against these indicators now very visible in Guyana society that we expect budget 2025 to distribute more to Guyanese citizens who face to meet the challenges of everyday cost of living. Mr. Speaker, even the two most interesting easing of cost of living measures, electricity and the cash grant program, are fraught with challenges and clearly highlights the PPP's Jaganomics approach to development. This is defined in the litany of failed economic projects to a favorite of the most honorable Vice President. These, of course, include the failed Skeldon plant, the infamous use of NIS funds for the Berbice Bridge project. Now he wants another bridge, the failed fiber optic project, the consistent failure of Gaisuko, and the Amila Falls project, to name a few. On the power generation front, the government is hanging the transformation of the economy through cheaper electricity costs on the finalization of the gas to shore project, now costing the taxpayers of Guyana $2.4 billion, a cost increase of more than 200% and counting. Today, no one knows for sure when the project will be completed, what the total cost will end up being, and if indeed the cost of electricity to the consumer will be reduced by 50%. But at the same time, we are considering a second project. Madam Speaker, what is most worrying about Budget 2025 is that there appears to be no overarching development policy within which sits all these economic measures. The current state of the cash grant program is testimony to this. Madam Speaker, in July of 2024, when the AFC again proposed the transfer of oil monies to citizens, and I must say our partners, the APNU, also have had the same philosophy, Vice President Jagdeo stated that this was impractical. Vice President Jack Dio stated, July 26, 2024, it is impractical to give Guyanese money. The article is right there. Vice President Dr. Barrett Jagdeo, you know, I told you about this Jaganomics theory, stated on Thursday that the recent proposal made by the Alliance for Change leader to transfer the Guyana oil revenues to citizens is not only impractical, but wholly unwise. Well, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? From July 2024, we went to deciding in November we were going to give 200,000 to each household. We didn't know how many households, and then we changed it to 100,000 per person, and we still got thousands of people that ain't get anything. Of course, we now know that, Madam Speaker, savings of missions of this budget is the high cost, Madam Speaker, one service omissions from this budget is the high cost of unorthodox practices of dubious legality. The big C, or Guyanese know it as run-ins. This is demonstrated in the 600 million plus above the engineer's estimate for the construction of one of the blocks for the Schooner Highway. Then there's the award of the contract of nearly 900 million for a pump house to a company with no prior or relevant experience. Madam Speaker, in these two examples alone, we are talking about $1.5 billion of the people's money squandered. How could we have a project that is 600 million above the engineer's estimate? Imagine if we are building, Guyana, imagine you building your house and the engineer tells you your house gonna cost $30 million, and then they're gonna increase it to $100 million. You gonna wanna know where the extra money going? The whole of Guyana wants to know where the extra money is going. Do you see how we could find fiscal space to pay the teachers, the nurses, all the other public servants that need a livable wage? We will do that when we return. To the Honorable Minister of House, to the Honorable Minister of Health, please note the massive runnings I am referring to. Let me remind the Minister of Health of these contracts. We heard your presentation yesterday, and really, you should not throw stones if you live in a glass house. Mr. Speaker, Guyana is now an oil-producing nation. This industry is driving our economy, and it is all education, and it's driving employment. But how can we hope to fill these jobs when some 69% of our young people are failing CXC maths? Look at the indicators right there in the budget. Look at the indicators for the post-secondary education. Madam Speaker, gross enrollment rate at TVEC institutions is 1%. And at tertiary institutions, it was 11% in 2024. And the government is hoping to bring it up to 15%. Mr. Speaker, in an economy driven by industrialization, we cannot have our young people pursuing technical and vocational education because they are not passing maths. What we want to do is ensure all students have a sound education of all the core subjects so that they can really be in a position to make a choice of what they want to do with their future. We hear a lot of talk about textbooks. Oh boy, we're giving textbooks. Well, guess what? In the hard times of the 70s when I went to school, I used to get every single textbook. We were instructed to wrap it good in brown paper, look after it, and we made sure that the students coming after it had a nice, good quality textbook to use. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, unfortunately we have been regaled in this house that the APNU AFC government never built one school. I have to correct that piece of mendacious propaganda. It keeps coming up. In her hysteria to promote this untruth, the Minister of Education conveniently omits the monumental disaster that defines her. Let me remind you guys of the Cato Primary School. Started in 2012. The contract work began in 2013. Was supposed to be completed in 2015. And in 2018, the school was declared unfit for use. $850 million later. But guess what? It was finally completed by our APNU AFC administration. I had the pleasure of going to that opening. In the final analysis, that school which defines the Honorable Minister of Education cost this country $781 million plus a further $140 million to fix. Do not forget that. But what is interesting is they talk about nothing happening in the Burnham days. All the negative information. Guess what? Madam Speaker, according to the Ministry of Education's document, Revolutionary Departures in Social Economic Development, I want to tell you about this number of schools built, renovated, and built, extended, and renovated between 1970 to 1979, the lean years. There were 17 nursery schools, 25 primary schools, and guess what? 26 nursery schools. I know the minister might forget because maybe she wasn't born prior to 1992. We built bridges. We built glassware. We built stoves. We built fridges. We assembled our own cars, radios, rice, sugar, grew potatoes, planted cotton, made our own fabric. I say this for the young Guyanese so they know the strong history you come from. Mr. Speaker, let the record of this House show that in Region 7 alone, primary schools were built in Cameron, Cato, and Baimadai, Parima, and Ederingban by the same coalition. I want to go to roads and infrastructure. Madam Speaker, the budget allocates $209.3 billion to this. But we know the challenges with cost overruns, knocking off project managers, stopping contracts. While the emphasis on infrastructure development in this budget is undeniable, on the ground the reality paints a far less optimistic picture. A staggering 43% of the national budget is allocated to capital expenditures, which appears impressive at first glance, with projects like the replacement of the Demerara Harbor Bridge. But Madam Speaker, what is the reality of some of the work that has actually been done
Honorable Member,
on the ground?
in order to tell me what the reality is, we need an extension, please.
Thank you. Comrade Speaker, the students are wondering where the catwalling is coming from. That is a government minister who's making that song. I do ask that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude.
Granted. Please continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to say to the House that in several places, and we saw it on Facebook being shared by a young lady with regard to the road at Mahaika Market. And this is the reality in many areas of Georgetown, where asphalt roads, like the one that existed in Thorn Drive, is being changed from a 16-foot wide road to a 12-foot pathway that does not allow two cars to pass. The people of Tocqueville are worse off for the road they got. Mr. Speaker, I want to mention a few things. The Minister of Home Affairs yesterday spoke about, 2 days ago, spoke about all the police stations, new ones, all the cars that we're importing. Well, guess what? We had, during our time, a higher level of police officers that had integrity. Because when he's looking at the cars that are being imported, guess what? Police officers are the bandits. Some police officers, the renegade police officers that they're doing nothing about, are the bandits. They're the petty drug dealers, and then they're the cocaine smugglers. That is the reality. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we all know that this budget does not provide a livable wage for pensioners or for a single parent mother. I will not go through the numbers as I'm short on time, and we have clearly showed how the budget of a family with 3 children can come up to close to $320,000. And if we assume that both parents are making that 130,000, you see that they start off with a deficit. That is the reality that this budget doesn't deal with. Mr. Speaker, I want to go now to addressing some of the challenges that, some of the work that has been done in the telecommunications industry. And the Honorable Prime Minister, I'm so glad you're here. I compliment you because you are continuing the policies of our innovation, industry and innovation unit that I started and we started under the Ministry of Public Telecommunications. I do want to say though that with liberalization, there was an expectation that the cost would fall. And a lot of companies in the sector are saying that the 45% increase in the cost of spectrum, that cost has not gone down, so they're not benefiting. Mr. Prime Minister, if you look at your same indicators, only 2 ICT companies were opened up. According to the indicators in the same budget, feel free to check it, only 2 in 2024. So you got to question how this liberalization is working. Mr. Speaker, you know, we've had a challenge. Some more mendacious propaganda has surrounded the concept of rigging, and we hear it all the time here. We hear us talking about the PPP, up new AFC. We don't hear us talking about Guyana enough. And when it comes to rigging, there are a few things I want to say in closing. Let it be clear, Madam Speaker, only GCOM is responsible for the holding of elections in this country. It is interesting, and we had a meeting with them last week. GCOM has not done an internal review yet of the last election. They have not attempted to sanction their staff that were involved with those 47 boxes on the East Coast. Madam Speaker, we talk about the international observers. GCOM has up to now not reviewed as a commission one of their recommendations. They've not reviewed any, and they started talking about biometrics last year when the country was talking about biometrics. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the next time around we can have a little more maturity, that we might sit as a people on both sides and talk about this budget, not now for the first time, but as a meeting. And the Honorable Gail Teixeira talked about the former presidents meeting together.
Honorable member.
That's the spirit within which this
Honorable
budget
member.
discussion should take place before we get in the House, so
Honorable
our
member.
recommendations might be included. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much to the people of Guyana. Better will come.
Thank you, honorable member.